Hi there, welcome to today's session of Every Mark Matters with me, Mr. MacDonald. Today we're having a look at Edexcel GCSE History. Our paper of the day is Paper 1, Medicine Through Time, and today's question is a specific focus on the Medicine on the Western Front part of your Paper 1. So as always, what we're going to do is we're going to break up this exam question into its three components, have a look at how to answer it, and then sort of discuss through what the mark schemes after. So first and foremost, just to start with our first component, that is the command phrase. For this question, it is how useful, and that means that you must analyze the sources. Our focus of today's question is problems of trench foot. So I'm just going to annotate that with focus. I'm just going to put 3 little lines coming off the word focus. Do you want to now press pause and begin to think about what knowledge you have about the problems of trench foot on the Western Front? So press pause. I'll see you shortly. Okay, right. So let's. The best way I apply knowledge to this type of question, particularly when it comes to World War One, is bleeding, infection, time. Okay, and what I'll do is I just add knowledge around any of these areas here and see what's relevant. So first and foremost, bleeding isn't relevant to this question, so I'm going to leave it. Okay, but infection is very relevant to this question, and as we know, it was caused by dirty, muddy water. We also know that it was caused by the fact that soldiers spent most of their time outside with little rain cover. Again, we also know that as it was caused by dirty water, well, realistically, it was cold, wet feet. It was treated through amputation. And it was prevented through foot inspections or whale oil. Okay, so there's loads of stuff about infection. Let's have a little look at time. So again, there's not a great deal of time of knowledge that's relevant to time, but what we could think about is where does the treatment or prevention take place? All right, and in most instances, it would take place obviously within the chain of evacuation, but it's not serious enough to be in the casualty clearing station or base hospital. It would most likely take place in the regimental aid post. And the idea there, that is the closest medical centre to the front lines. And all they're going to do is basic first aid. Okay, right, so let's have a look at the final component. And with this component, it's the second order concept. And what we are looking at is we are looking at sources. That is sources A and B. Okay, there are 3 areas of knowledge that you need to talk about when you're analysing sources. The first area of knowledge is contents. That means what does it say? Or show. The second area of knowledge is provenance. That is who made it, when was it made, and why was it made. And then finally, the third area of knowledge is your actual own knowledge. So what facts do you have that's relevant to the source? So it's just relevant knowledge. Okay, right. This question is an 8-mark question. So what that means there, that you're going to spend 10 minutes writing down 2 paragraphs. With this question, obviously you're going to do a 1 on A and your second on B. Okay. Just before we do begin, let's have a little look at this at what the mark scheme's after. So I'm just going to move all the way down to the bottom half of my page here. I'm just going to put a quick success criteria. Right, okay, so this question is marked using the acronym of JACK. So that's Judgment, Analysis, Contextual Knowledge. Okay? And again, with this question, like all questions, it's scored in levels. Okay? So I'm just going to do all 3 of them here. So there's only 3 levels with this question. So I'm just going to do level 1, 2, and 3. Okay? So for your judgment, that is, all you've done is you've just given a simple reason why it's useful. Okay? So you've just said it's useful because. Okay, it's a simple sentence. For level 2, now loads of young people really struggle to start with this question and struggle to say, you know, what's good about the source, what can we learn from it? So all I would simply do with is I would just go with a summary of one source. And what that does is, by doing that, you are just providing your introduction to your analysis. And then again for level 3, it's a summary of both sources. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a moment. Okay? Right. Let's have a look at our analysis. So for level 1, so again, I'm on judgment, analysis, contextual knowledge. Now I'm on analysis. So let's have a look at level 1 would be a simple quote. Maybe a paraphrase. For level 2 would be 1 quote plus an inference, or analysis of the provenance. And for level 3, it would be 2 quotes plus 2 inferences and analysis of the provenance. And then finally, when we're having a look at subject knowledge, I'll just move my camera down here ever so slightly. When we're having a little look at subject knowledge, okay, so level 1 is no knowledge. There's no relevant knowledge. For level 2, we have some vague knowledge. Maybe the top end of level 2 would be have some knowledge about one of the sources. And then for level 3, relevance, precise, contextual knowledge. Okay, team. So, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to suggest you press pause. You set yourself a 10-minute timer, put all your devices away. Have a little look at sources A and B. Let me just grab my copy. and have a look at sources A and B and tell me how useful are they for an inquiry into the problem of trench foots. 10 minutes reading through the provenance and the content of both sources and then analysing how useful they are. 10 minutes. I'll see you shortly. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Right, so I'm hoping there that you have spent 10 minutes analysing sources A and B, telling me how useful they are for an inquiry into the problems of trench foot. What I'm going to do is I'm very conscious of my own handwriting, so I'm just going to read out my answer, and as I'm going to do it, I'm going to self-assess my own answer, and I'm going to be looking for, again, judgment, analysis, contextual knowledge that we've got down here. Judgment, analysis, contextual knowledge to say how useful they are for an inquiry into the problems of trench foot. Okay, right, let's begin with source A. One reason why source A is useful is because it describes the causes of trench foot. Okay, so almost immediately with that sentence, I've just put a summary. Okay, and again, loads of people struggle to start with these questions and don't actually know what's the best way to start. All I would say is just bring in a summary of what it says or shows, and that is, to begin with, is your judgment mark. Okay, now obviously there's more to it, but let's continue. For example, it says the battalion lived in mud and water. Okay, so there is my quote from the contents, which highlights how the trenches did not have adequate protection against trench foot and had not been built well. So there's my inference. It goes on to say that how they tried to deal with trench foot, where men were sent 2 at a time to rub grease on each other's feet. Again, there's my second quotation, so there's my content. This shows how big of an issue trench foot was for the soldiers on the Western Front and highlights the attempts to deal with it. Here we go, there's my second inference. From my own knowledge, I know, so just to clarify, all of those are 4 sentences there, that's my analysis. And all that is there is that's the analysis of the content. From my own knowledge, I know that trench foot was caused by soldiers standing in cold, wet water and would need to be amputated if left untreated. Here is my contextual knowledge. The source is written by Captain Impey. Right, so there's the author. So I'm looking at the provenance now, who served on the Western Front with the Royal Sussex Regiment. This makes the source useful as it comes from a senior officer who would have a stronger understanding of the wider picture on the issue of trench foot for the whole battalion. Right, there is my analysis of the provenance. There's also, looking at this phrase here, this makes the source useful. That's a judgment mark. I'll put that a J in a circle. However, the provenance does not have a year indicating it could have been written long after the war, meaning the accuracy could be affected by time. Okay, and there what I've done is I've talked about the limitations of the provenance. Okay, right, so there's source A. So I've summarised what it says to get me started. I've analysed the content of the source with 2 quotations, 2 inferences. I've brought in a fact from my own knowledge. I've made a reference to the provenance of the source and explained why it makes it useful. But I've also said about how the provenance is limited. Right, let's have a go at source B. So let's have a little look at source B. Okay, so what you'll notice the same technique. One reason why source B is useful is because it shows the treatment of the trench foot in the support trench. So again, there's my summary. And again, this is my judgment mark. For example, in the source, I could see grease being rubbed onto soldiers' feet to treat or prevent trench foot. So there's a reference to the content. The picture suggests that soldiers are used to the treatment, which also highlights how big of an issue trench foot is. There's my inference. So it's always difficult with pictures to get sort of, obviously there's no quotation, so you just got to describe what you could see and get an inference out of it. I can also see soldiers queuing for treatment. This implies, so then again, there's another reference to the content. This implies that the soldiers are, this implies that it is regularly organised and the method of treatment that is planned into a soldier's day. Again, there's my inference. So again, here, before I go on to do any more, there's my analysis of the content. Now what I want to do is I want to have a little look at my own knowledge. From my own knowledge, I suspect this photo is taken at a, let's have a look, regimental aid post, which, oops, I've not got it on camera, which administered basic first aid close to the front line. So again, it's not fantastic knowledge, but it's quite difficult to get some knowledge out of this one. But again, you can see there's my contextual knowledge. Now what I'm about to do is I'm going to go into the provenance. That's who made it, when it was made, and why. The source is a photograph taken in 1918. So there's my date, which makes it useful. Again, I've used that phrase again, giving myself a judgment mark, because it provides a visual image from the time and cannot be changed or edited. So here is I'm referring to the strength to the provenance. Let's have a look at the weaknesses. However, it could be limited as the source could be staged and the provenance does not imply why the photo was taken. So there's the limitations of the provenance. Okay, right, so let's go back to my success criteria. We'll do it one at a time, okay? So, have I given a simple reason? Well, I definitely have. Have I got a summary of one source? Yeah, absolutely. Have I got a summary of both sources? Yes, I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a J here, and I'm going to give myself a level 3 for Jack. Okay, let's have a look at analysis. Oh, for judgment, sorry. Let's have a look at analysis. Have I done a simple quote paraphrase? No, I haven't. Have I got one quote and inference and or provenance? Well, I've definitely got more than that. Have I got 2 quotes, 2 inferences, and analysis of the provenance? Yes, I have indeed. So I'm going to put level 3 here. And then finally, for contextual knowledge, have I got what? Have I put knowledge? Yes, I have. Have I put some vague knowledge? Absolutely not. Have I got relevant, precise contextual knowledge? I have indeed. So there we go, is my level 3. And that means out of 8, I've got 8 out of 8. Absolutely smashed it. Okay? And just before you go, I just want to show you one more question. And that is the tricky, how could you follow up source A? Okay? So I'll just take you through this question just before we wrap up our time together. So this will always be tagged onto your how useful question. I am gonna break this up, but I'm not gonna worry about the focus. But just to begin with, I'm just gonna refer to the command phrase. And that, for this question, is how could you follow up? What this wants you to do is repeat the process of a historian. Okay, so it's given you a historical challenge. How do we find out more about it? How do we find out more about trench foot? Our focus of the question is trench foot. I'm not going to waste time annotating that because we don't need to worry about it right now. And our second order concept is source A. Okay? And we're only referring to source A, not source B. All right? Okay, so this is a 5-minute question. It's not really a paragraph question because it's going to come up with with these sort of sub-questions here. So it's going to come up with these here. You won't see 2, I'm just showing you 2. All right? So there's 2 techniques that you could use. Okay? The first is what I call Carrington's law. This, for me, I think is the best one and the easiest one to do. All right. However, the other method is called the RAMC medical records. All right. I'm going to take you through both of them. All right. So firstly, in this one here, what you need to do is you just need a quotation. All right. And then, so it's going to be a quotation from source A. It can't be from source B. You're not going to get any marks for it. All right. So then it's going to ask that you need to ask a question to follow up the quotation. All right. So what you're going to do is you're going to use the phrase "how effective." All right. And then you're going to add it to the focus. So you're going to combine them together. All right. Then finally, penultimately for Carrington's law, it's for this one. It wants you, the exam board, they want you to memorize a whole host of sources for you to remember and apply it in there. We're not going to do that. We're going to refer to the provenance of source B. If you just state source B, you're not going to get any marks. You have to actually state the name of state the provenance of it. And then finally, how will it help you answer the question? Well, you've already done the hard work. You need an inference or explanation why source B is useful. Easy, easy, easy. Okay? Just before you do it, have a go on your own. I'm just going to repeat the process for RAMC medical records. So what you're going to do is you're going to, again, it's the same for the first bit, put a quotation from source A. I'm just going to write that over here. Then what you're going to do is you need to ask a question. Okay? So your question needs to be relevant to RAMC medical records. So must be relevant to RAMC medical records. Okay? Type of source that you're going to use. Well, you're just going to say RAMC medical records. So that's the source that you're going to use. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to write that in now. RAMC medical records. And for here, for the final one, is you just need to say why. Okay, right. Give yourself 5 minutes. You probably don't need as much as 5 minutes. All right, but give yourself 5 minutes. I'm going to take you through both ways so you can self-assess your own answer. Nice and simple, guys. You're either choosing to do Carrington's law or RAMC medical records to tell me how could you follow up source A to find out more about the problem of trench foot. Press pause. Give yourself 5 minutes. Or less than that, maybe. I'll see you shortly. Bye-bye. Okay, right. Welcome back. Right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer this question and I'm going to mark it as I go. Okay. Right, so just to show you then, so the quotation, now again, the reason why I'm teaching you this is because you've already done the hard work already. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pick out a quotation for my how useful answer. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say the battalion lived in mud and water. So it's the same quotation that I've already used. There's my first mark. So if you've got a relevant quotation, there's your first mark. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine how effective and the focus. So I'm going to start my question with how effective. Okay? Now the focus of the question is the problem of trench foot. So what I might do is I might just say how effective were the methods of preventing trench foot. Okay, and again, all I've done there is I've just added effective. I've said start my question on how effective. I've combined it with the focus, so there's my second mark. Type of source, well, if I go straight back to source B, all right. So I'm not going to state source B, because if I do that, I'm not going to get any marks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a photograph of I might just add a little bit of flavour, a regimental aid post in 1918. Okay, well, how might this help answer my question? Again, all I'm going to do is I'm going to use my inference or my explanation from the how useful question about this is I'm simply going to say it might show us how they tried to prevent a trench foot. And there again, so there's my third mark, there's my fourth mark, easy peasy. Okay, right, let me show you RAMC medical records. So I'm going to use the same quotation. All right, now this time I have to make up my own question. I can't use a how effective and focus. So what I'm going to use is and it has to be a question that I can answer with RAMC medical records. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say how many amputations were direct results of trench foot. Okay, right, so here there's my first mark, there's my second mark. RAMC medical records, there's my third mark. How might this help answer my question? It will provide me with a accurate number of amputations caused by trench foot. And there we have it. There's my fourth mark. Easy. Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Make sure you self-assess your own work. And I'll see you next time. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.